Welcome to the Women Getting Stupid Rich podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Blosman, and this is Season 1. I believe putting women in leadership roles is not the answer. I believe it's simply a band-aid, a distraction from the real solution. Quantum leap change for women happens when they own wildly successful and profitable businesses, creating thousands of bootstrapping self-made female millionaires and billionaires. This podcast allows you to ride shotgun with me as I launch my new business, Femcanic Tools. I will be documenting my full journey from $0 to the first million with a goal of doing it in 12 months. I will share all of the behind-the-scenes secrets of what works and what doesn't, using 100% of my own money with no day job. On your marks, get set, let's do this. Today, I am blessed to have Erica Rooney join me to talk about a topic that I am incredibly passionate about. And it's part of this topic is the glass ceiling. The other part of this is the sticky floor. And the sticky floor concept was introduced to me relatively recent, I'd say within the last 2 to 3 years. And when it was first introduced to me, Erica, I was like, huh? And then the more I started chewing on it and processing it, the more I'm like, oh my gosh. Because there's like two schools of thought. Historically, I've had a hard time connecting with women, if I'm being honest. Most of my closest friends and stuff have been guys. I never really experienced the glass ceiling issue, so to speak, where I just kind of went for it. And my greatest mentors and biggest cheerleaders have been men, and they've helped me along the way. It didn't hinder me as a woman. But I was naive in the big picture in assuming that all women have that experience. And the reality is, not all women have that experience. They don't. I've seen women who are overly sexualized, and because of being pretty or their looks, that it helped them in some ways and hindered them in others. Right? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. That's called pretty privilege.
And then I've seen, and it's crazy for some women to even think of that, right? Like, oh, like looks hurt you. Actually, it can in some ways where men don't take them serious for their mind because they can't get past their looks.
Absolutely.
That's a very real thing.
Yeah. I love that you bring that up. That was actually the very first topic that I dropped on my podcast was called Pretty Privilege, because the woman that I was talking to shared her experience of being given a job and being invited to sit at the table because of how she looked. But when she got there, she found that she wasn't there for her brains and for what she could actually offer. She was there because she was fun. They enjoyed having her around and she was nice to look at.
Yeah. I actually talked to a woman, this wasn't in an interview, but she shared with me how she had won an award at this was a Fortune 100 company. She won an award based on her work, truly her work. And a top executive who had never met her before, right, in person, right? They'd been on Zoom calls and things like that. And clearly the numbers show the work that she was doing. That's why she won the award, because it was based on merit and actual stats, right? She gets up on stage and he gives her the award, makes some kind of, off microphone shitty comment, sexual comment, and then slaps, like it touches her ass. And I'm like, what?
No.
I'm like, wow.
Like, in what mind do you think that's okay?
I don't know. Like, I just, and if I'm being honest, Erica, I've never ran into that. I've always been kind of one of the guys and kind of that whole thing. So I was in this like little bubble. And when she shared that with me, I'm like, oh my God. And then I started just stopping. I paused and I looked at all areas, right? There's, hey, you get a seat at the table, but we're not going to listen to anything you say just because you look the way you look. But then there's the other extreme. And I'm not saying that someone's ugly. That's not what I'm getting at. But it just because you have a seat at the table doesn't mean you have a voice either.
Absolutely.
Is all I'm getting at. And the idea here is, let's get a seat at the table, but it's time to be heard. What I'm interested in talking about today and having a conversation, dialogue with you about, are the things that we actually have control over.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's easy to fall into the feeling of hopelessness, helplessness, when there's things that we can't control. We can't control the pig and douchebag. We can't control other people.
Absolutely.
What we can control is our own mindset, our own drive. We can control ourselves, right? And that's what I'm interested in talking about, because those are the things that we can choose to give away to someone else, right? Give that power away to someone else, or choose to own and make it our own.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, Jamie, the reason that I focus on these sticky floors is because for us to reach just equal pay, men to women, it's going to be approximately 200 years if we are continuing at the rate we are continuing at. And that's looking at it from a global standpoint, right? If we break it down to industry, it's going to be a lot faster for some, and it's going to be a lot slower for those that are historically male dominated, right? So we have to be very vigilant in knowing that we're not going to see that in our lifetime. Period. Dot. The end. We're not going to see that in our kids' lifetimes, right? So we have to move the needle where we can for ourselves, which is inside of those sticky floors, right? We need to acknowledge the fact that in industries that are male dominated, we are going to feel a hell of a lot of sticky floors. There is no way.
I want to go through a definition real quick.
Yes.
So some people are very familiar with the sticky floor. Others are like, what the
hell are you talking
about? Right? So let's if you want to just at a high level, glass ceiling versus sticky floor. Everyone seems to be familiar with the glass ceiling concept, right? So, but let's go through both just to make sure that we kind of get all those definitions out.
Yeah. So starting with the glass ceiling, that is that very invisible but very real barrier that women have a hard time busting through because it is dominated by men. Leadership are dominated by men. And in that top level, it's all men, which makes it even harder for women to get into those roles, right? There's a bunch of social norms, cultures that have created that. The good old boys club, the patriarchy, call it what you want. Those things make it hard for us to break through the glass ceiling. Certain reasons are people tend to hire people who look like them, right? You're a man, you look like a man, you get in, right? All of these things, which are in general, a lot of times unconscious, so they're not even realized, keep us from breaking through the glass ceiling. It's very real. It's extremely real for marginalized groups. So people in the LGBTQ plus community, people of color, Native American, and all of those, even harder for just women in general to break through, right? That's what's going to take us 200 years. The sticky floors are those limiting belief concepts that we hold about ourselves that we may not even be necessarily aware of. So perfectionism, imposter syndrome, being in toxic behaviors, toxic relationships, not realizing or recognizing your value or your worth or what you bring to the table, right? Pretty privilege is also a sticky floor that you can get stuck in if you are someone that is basing your looks off of your worth and how you get a role. So all of those sticky floors that I just mentioned, those are things we can control, right? I can control my perfectionism. I can control a bit of imposter syndrome when I recognize that it's there. So that's a big piece of it, is the recognition of the sticky floor. And we can dive into that because if you don't know you have it, you can't address it.
Yeah. And it's interesting because when it was first introduced to me and she was explaining it, and I was just sitting there pausing. I'm like, wow, we have been focused, and I say we, it's a collective we as women, on the glass ceiling. But we're focused on the wrong thing, because the glass ceiling we don't have control over. Someone else is controlling who's doing the hiring or who's. So here we are focusing on this self-defeating, right, hamster wheel. When really what we should be focusing on, and when I say we, any marginalized group, is the sticky floor syndrome, because that's the part we have control over.
Absolutely. And I want to acknowledge that that glass ceiling is real and it's there, right? And like you said, though, we don't have the control over it. We are not going to be able to change these social norms that have created this system that makes it impossible for us to break through. We're not going to see through that, but we can control how we react, right? I know that's a very cliche thing. We can't control other people. We control how we react, but it is so true. And you will make leaps and bounds if you can acknowledge those sticky floors within yourself, and you can overcome them a lot faster and break through your own glass ceilings. We don't got to wait 200 years. In 2021 and 2022, when the pandemic hit, more women flooded this entrepreneurship market than ever before, right? They had to get creative. They had to leave corporate because they had to take care of kids. They had to change jobs and careers. Like, there was a very big global shift, and more women started their own business during the time of the pandemic than ever before. However, they received the smallest piece of the pie when it comes to venture capital and funding. Everybody funds men, nobody funds women. And that again goes all the way back to this like society construct, right? So there are far more fewer successful women in entrepreneurship now than there have been men, right? If you were to go through an exercise where you talked with somebody about a successful CEO, your brain automatically pictures a man. It doesn't picture a woman. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Even as a woman.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just how we've been taught to grow up through society. And so the imposter syndrome is very real, because when you don't see people who look like you, think like you, act like you, there is a piece of you deep down that is like, do I really belong in this space? You know, do I have what it takes? You know, and it's also a very new space, right? So being in corporate, you're like, I know this shit like the back of my hand. I have done this time and time again, and I have successfully climbed the corporate ladder and hit my milestones. This entrepreneurial, everything is a new day. So not only is there that basic level of, wow, I've never done this before, but it's also, wow, I've never done this before, and I don't see a lot of women out there doing it. And I'm focused on an industry that isn't typically female dominated. So it's like the trifecta there.
One thing that I'm doing is putting together a mastermind where nothing complex, meet once a month, and you surround yourself around with like-minded people and like-minded women. And I recommend having both men and women.
Absolutely.
Right? And some of them together, men and women, and some exclusively women, for women. Mm-hmm. Because it's a different conversation, I have found. Mm-hmm. And you don't feel weird bringing up menopause or breast pain or gynecologist appointments or, you know, fertility challenges, or like, you're not afraid of bringing those things up, and it doesn't feel taboo. It doesn't get quiet. I will say, at first, when we would talk about these things, it was kind of like, especially in a professional setting, you kind of see women like
side-eyeing
for a minute. Yeah. Pause for a minute. And that happened just this year a couple months ago at PRI. And I was co-hosting a conference for racetrack owners. And for the first time in the history of that conference, 11-year history, during break, I grabbed the microphone and I started interviewing many interviews of women in the crowd. And I was asking them stuff that mattered to them. Hey, what are some simple things that tracks can do? Guess what? Clean bathrooms. No woman wants to sit on piss.
Nope.
When they sit down to go to the bathroom.
Yep.
Figure it out, guys, right? It's figuring out, why are women's bathrooms the only one that have child changing? I don't want to have to do it all the damn time. I want my husband to go do it some too. So get them a changing thing in the bathroom.
Right.
And it was interesting. Like, at first, women were afraid to come over and join in on the conversation. But by the end of the conference, the 8-hour conference, women were proactively coming over and having the conversations. But they were almost afraid to talk about those things. Afraid that they would be labeled as the complaining woman.
High maintenance, all the things. Exactly. And in this instance specifically, right, they're sitting there and I don't want to complain. I don't want to cause a problem. This is the way it is. We just have to accept
blend
it.
in.
Right. We just have to accept it. We have to blend in. Don't make a big stink about it. Right. But none of that drives change. And it is going to take time. And that's why I say there's that time factor. We are likely not going to see all of this change. But you know what? The second there are changing tables in all bathrooms, then same-sex couples can now come to the arena, right? What if there's two men with a gaggle of children? Right. Where are they supposed to go? You know, so you are inviting more people to participate in this awesome event because you are making it equal for everybody. And it's not that they're not there because people want to be exclusive. It's that those changing tables are not there because right now it is a male-dominant industry and they just haven't thought about it.
It's true.
They literally haven't thought of it. And that's what I love to talk to people about. It's not about people being stupid or exclusive or malicious. It is a perspective, a lens that they have never looked through before.
Yep.
And so why would they consider that?
That's right. That's right. Erica, I love this. How can the listeners connect with you and your podcast?
Absolutely. So my podcast is called From Now to Next. It's on anywhere you get your podcast, Apple Music, Spotify, wherever. But you can connect with me personally on LinkedIn. I am extremely active and responsive on LinkedIn, also on Instagram and Facebook, if you so choose, whatever your social media platform. I've recently gone down the devil of TikTok. Don't know how long I'll stay there, but you can find me.
Nice. Erica, thank you so much for having this great conversation for all entrepreneurs, but really an education for both men and women, and awareness for men, and for the women out there, just simply saying, you're not alone. We got your back and we're with you, right along there with you. And no, ladies, you are not crazy. You are not crazy. We are all feeling this at one point in time. So come join along with us and we will get through it together. Erica, any final words of wisdom you would like to share with the FemCanic community?
Just do the damn thing. You know what? Because what's the worst that could happen?
Love it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.